News every 15 minutes, weather every 10, and sports twice an hour.
Newstalk, KGVO, AM 1290 and 101.5 FM.
You're listening to Montana Morning with Peter Christian.
The former Montana senator is dead. Good morning, everyone. It's Montana Morning. It is Friday, April 29th, 2016. Skies overcast, 36 degrees in Missoula right now. Our newscast this morning sponsored by Kootenai Creek Village, the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville, where they offer the best of Western Montana living. The number to call, 777-5387. Our top story this morning, former Montana Senator Conrad Burns, a former cattle auctioneer whose folksy demeanor and political acumen earned him 3 terms, and the bitter disdain of his opponents, has died. He was 81. Montana Republican Party Executive Director Jeff Essman said Burns died Thursday of natural causes at his home in Billings. Burns defeated 2-term U.S. Senator John Melcher in 1988 and rose to one of the most influential positions in Washington. The Republican used his influence on the Appropriations Committee to set the course on energy development and public lands management across the rural West. He was ousted from office in 2006 under the specter of scandal after developing close ties to lobbyist Jack Abramoff, who was later jailed for conspiracy and fraud. No charges were ever filed against Conrad Burns. 2 escapees from the Butte Prerelease Center were apprehended last night here in Missoula. Sergeant Jonathan Steinford with the Missoula County Sheriff's Office says authorities were notified that the 2 escapees were in the Missoula area. They were identified as 26-year-old Sean Michael Church and 22-year-old Daniel Shea Deming.
We served a search warrant on 7th Street looking for the 2 escapees out of Butte, Sean Church and Daniel Deming, and arrested Church at that location, and then got Deming several hours later, a little bit farther south in Reserve.
Steinford said it was unclear how both Church and Deming got to Missoula, but both were on foot when they were apprehended.
Nobody was hurt. I'm not sure how they got from Butte to here, but both fled on foot. One was apprehended on scene, and the other fled farther. They will probably have to appear here and then get extradited back to Butte.
NBC Montana reports, according to the Montana Department of Corrections, Deming was originally charged with forgery out of Lewis and Clark County, while Church was charged with burglary out of Beaverhead County in June of 2011. They'll both appear in Missoula Justice Court this afternoon at 2:30. A new audit says the state's financial statements are error-free this time, unlike a year ago when an audit revealed scores of mistakes and cited a lack of internal controls that could have exposed the errors sooner. Last year's mistakes prompted the governor's office to put in place new protocols and hire a new accountant. The current audit covers the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015. While state employees described some of last year's errors as simple mistakes, such as dropping zeros from large numbers, the errors could have affected the state's bond rating. Some mistakes were big, including a $1 billion overstatement of accumulated depreciation related to the state's infrastructure. Audits are routine, but they do help investors and bond rating companies evaluate an institution's financial health. A group of students at UM called Reinvest Montana created a protest to urge the UM Foundation to divest and cut ties with the fossil fuel industry. As a result, U of M police had to get involved. UM Police Chief Marty Ludeman explained the nature of the protest.
On Tuesday, they decided to occupy the foundation's lobby area. They just basically sat in there. They were doing homework, and they did some chanting and some singing a little bit. And we just asked them to keep the volume down, and they did. But we also advised them at 5 o'clock the business does close, and they were going to have to leave the building at that time.
According to Ludeman, about 40 people showed up to join the protest about 4 p.m. When police told them it was time to go, 18 of those individuals stayed, knowing full well they were going to be arrested.
They were very respectful to my police officers and to the foundation, but they did have a point that they wanted to make and an agenda, and I thought they did it very well. They did it very respectfully, but there were the arrest consequences, and they basically chose that avenue and left me no choice other than to do what I had to do, and I think they understood that and appreciated that, too.
Those 18 people were cited and released on site, were escorted out of the building. Ludeman said they should be appearing in municipal court today. A Montana county plans to dispose of more than 3 dozen Cold War-era sanitation kits meant to provide makeshift bathroom facilities for fallout shelters. The Bozeman Daily Chronicle reports 42 fiberglass drums labeled SK4 Sanitation Kit were shipped to Gallatin County in January of 1964. They contained a toilet seat, commode liner, 10 rolls of toilet paper that people are cautioned to, quote, use sparingly, end quote, along with commode chemicals. The seat fits on top of the line drum. After county officials determined they didn't need the kits anymore, they found the Department of Defense didn't want them back. The Federal Emergency Management Agency had no use for them either. That's FEMA. The counties offered some to museums. The rest may be sold at auction. The value and date haven't yet been set. Any preppers out there? Got your hands raised? Yeah. As KGVO News recently reported, an unidentified female is suspected of stealing credit and debit cards last weekend and running up bills over $10,000 in less than 2 hours. Ryan Sullivan, investigator with the Montana Department of Justice's Office of Consumer Protection, has important tips to keep credit cards safe.
We always tell people to treat their credit card as if they were cash. We have a list of policies and suggestions to Montana consumers that you never want to give out those numbers to anyone over the phone unless you've actually called that company.
Sullivan said the ultimate loser in a scenario like this one last weekend is the consumer.
The consumer in the long run is going to be the person who loses because the credit card company will make sure to get their money back. The business will be out, and then the business will want to make up for those prices by raising everything.
At last report, the suspect, whose picture is a photograph, is on our website at newstalk.kgvo.com, is still at large. As Mike Malloy, the attorney representing best-selling author John Krakauer, stepped to the podium to address the Montana Supreme Court this week, he barely had begun when the justice interrupted and began peppering him with questions. Malloy had a word to describe the Montana University system's contention that the federal government would withhold student loans and other aid should the records be made available to his client. He said that word was hogwash.
No state has ever lost federal funds as a result of disclosure of records, number one. And number two, FERPA only causes jeopardy to funding of an educational institution if they engage in a pattern and practice of systematically disclosing student records.
Malloy added to his arguments against the university system.
There's a provision in FERPA that permits a court to make that kind of an order. So I wasn't buying that argument. And there's no way this university is going to lose any funding.
The Montana Supreme Court took the arguments from both sides under advisement and will release a decision at a later date. State officials are also proposing a floating boat dock be installed at Wild Horse Island and Flathead Lake in order to reduce injuries. The Flathead Beacon reports Montana State Parks is accepting public comments through May 30th on the proposal to place a 60-foot-long dock on Skiko Bay. Wild Horse Island draws about 16,000 visitors a year, despite not having a public dock anywhere on the 2,163-acre island. According to state officials, more than 60% of those visitors access the island through Skiko Bay. Currently, state officials say visitors often beach their boats and climb over the bow, leaping to shore. Officials say this kind of access can be hazardous. Our News Talk time, 6:12.
News Talk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station.
Mostly cloudy skies today with a chance of showers and an isolated thunderstorm. Highs will top out in the upper 50s. Tonight, a few showers early, becoming mostly cloudy with lows in the upper 30s. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for Missoula's KECI 13.